Welcome. In this video, we'll be looking at economics and we're doing a past paper review or revision. We are looking at 2020 paper 1 grade 10, specifically at question 2.3. Now, although this is grade 10, if you watch this video as a grade 11 or a grade 12 learner, as you know, grade 10 was the foundation and you are doing this in your current year. So 2.3, study the graph below and answer the questions that follow. So whenever you get a graph or any illustration, it is important that you indeed study the illustration or the graph that is below you, as at least one of the questions that follow will be on the graph or the illustration. So they may ask you to name something, to describe something, or to define something, and then they will ask you a question on the broader topic of what you're looking at. So with that being said, let us get into our first question. Name the positively sloped straight line on the above graph. So like I said, you should study the graph. Try to name everything. Name as much as you can, because I see that they have named some parts of the graph here, but then it's not everything, like the positively sloped line. So if you don't know what that is, positively sloped straight line is just a line that starts from the bottom going up. That is the positively part and straight line. So if you're confused, just look for a line that starts from the bottom and goes up gradually. So like I was saying, try to name as much as possible. Try to label it as much as possible, as detailed as possible. Try to make sense of the labels. Try to define them just to get your brain active before you get to looking at the questions, because they may be overwhelming, especially if you hadn't prepared beforehand. So prepare beforehand by labeling, defining, study the graph. That is my point. Just study the graph. So back to our first question. Name the positively sloped straight line, which I said is the line that starts at the bottom, goes up on the above graph. So this line is known as the trend line. And next question, what is the distance from peak to trough called? And this is known as the, I get to that, let us look at our graph. So this is the peak. Unfortunately, I am unable to highlight or write on this, so you'll just have to focus on my cursor. So this is the peak and this is the trough. So what is the distance between here to here? So if you have studied the graph, if you've done this before, you should know that this is the amplitude. This refers to the amplitude. Next question, briefly describe the term at constant prices for 2 marks. So it should be a very good detailed explanation. And this just refers to the price of goods and services that have been adjusted for inflation, and that will give you a full 2 marks. And like I said before, even though you're not in grade 10, this video does apply to you as grade 10. Any subject, grade 10 was the foundation of what you're going to do in the next coming years. Next question, briefly describe a feature of the depression phase. This just goes back to what I said, where you have to study, try to define, try to make sense of what you're looking at, and understand the topic as much as possible. So the depression phase, it wants one feature for 2 marks, because it says describe a feature. So you could have listed either businesses shut down, people lose jobs, and unemployment is very high. So even if you never studied for the test, for the exam, you can just apply your knowledge. Economics is a social science, so everything that is here is practical. So whenever the economy is going down, if I may say, for my lack of better words, what happens? We know that private businesses shut down because people don't have money to keep these businesses afloat. People lose jobs and unemployment is very high. And these are all a result of the businesses shutting down. So try to make it as practical as possible. You don't have to cram your whole textbook the night before an economics paper. Make economics practical and you will understand it. You will know it like the back of your hand. So next question, how does monetarist and Keynesian approaches on business cycles differ? So we know that Keynesians are the group, or is the group that does not advocate for government intervention, and Keynesians advocate for government intervention. So how do their approaches on business cycles differ? So monetarists believe that fluctuations in a business cycle are caused by external factors. And then on the other hand, Keynesians believe that fluctuations are caused by internal factors, and that will give you your full 4 marks. So on questions where they ask you to compare two things, try to keep it at the same topic, if that makes sense. In this question, they're very specific on what they wanted you to focus on in terms of their differentiation, but moving forward in other tests, other exams, even in other subjects, whenever you're asked to compare two different things, keep your comparison sentences or comparison lines on the same topic. Don't say, if I ask you to compare me and you, don't say Hope likes Coca-Cola and then you say your favorite color is blue. If you're talking about drinks, keep the line at drinks. I like Coca-Cola, you like Fanta. Then the next line, I like pink, you like blue. Keep your differences or your differentiation lines, sentences on the same topic. Because that is how most people lose marks, because there's literally, sometimes there's no correlation between people's answers, and that doesn't show very good thinking, which is what the invigilator is looking for. Please do note that at the time of this recording, I do have the flu, so if you notice any cuts in the video, I hope that won't be distracting for you, because it may mean I have to go cough or something, and I will not do that on the video. So next question, explain the difference between macroeconomics and microeconomics. I think in one of my videos, I explained what micro and macroeconomics is. I don't know if I ever released that video because I have so many videos on my USB, but for the sake of this video, macroeconomics studies the whole and focuses on the total or aggregate economic behavior, and focuses on things like economic growth, general price level and inflation, and BOP, which is balance of payments. And microeconomics studies small units or small parts of the market, so individual decision makers, such as households and consumers, and producers decide what to produce, how much, and at what price level. And they also study supply and demand, that's market equilibrium, as well as market prices. So macro, they study economics on a broader scale, and micro, they study economics on a micro scale. That should be the way that you can remember this. And then our last question is, examine the methods used to determine GDP, which is gross domestic product. And there are 3 ways. We learn about 3 ways of determining GDP, and this is through the production method, revenue method, and the expenditure method. So because they say 8 marks, you're not just gonna name them. And they also said examine. So naming won't get you far. You have to name and explain. So production method. With this method, GDP is determined by the sum of the value added at each stage of the production process. And revenue method, GDP is determined by the income earned from the factors of production within the borders of the country. And with the expenditure method, GDP is determined by the total expenditure on all final goods and services produced within the borders of the country. And that is it for this video. Hope you guys learned something. See you in the next one.